Hey, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Last Edit podcast, a podcast on film starring yours truly, Silver Hawkins, and my wonderful friend.
Citizen Slave, hello there.
Welcome to a special episode of the Last Edit. As you may know, usually we run the format of every week we discuss a particular film, and we alternate between choosing the film, Sleeve and I. And this episode, we've sort of opted to just sort of discuss a topic, and the topic that we're going to discuss is casting in film, which has been a somewhat controversial topic of late, with a casting for Ariel in the Disney live-action version of the film, and the new Bond announcement of the new Bond, and yeah, basically, just and I mean even like The Witcher Netflix series also had a bunch of casting
Yeah.
controversies as well. So yeah, I thought it's an interesting topic because to an extent I just do not understand the outrage over ethnic minorities playing characters that are ostensibly white or Caucasian, or I mean what I don't get is why people seem to draw the line there. Like I Not only that, but also like historically in theater, this hasn't really been much of an issue because in theater you see plenty of plays where female actors play male characters play female characters.
Mm.
Like Peter Pan has been pretty much since it was first performed in the beginning of the 20th century. The actor playing Peter Pan has been a woman, and Peter
Yeah.
Pan is the epitome of Peter Pan's character. Is that he's a boy. He's the boy who never grows up, and he's historically been played by a woman. But yet somehow there's this uproar today when this kind of thing happens, and you don't see this uproar with like normal healthy people who then play paraplegic people, or like 35-year-olds who play teenagers, or all this other stuff where they're not really the character they inhibit, which is why they're actors, by the way, I would say. um but that don't seem to engender the same controversy you get as when it's like a dichotomy between skin color or gender, which seems to be, I don't know, that seems to be a sticking point for a lot of people, where you can't have a woman playing a man and you can't have a man playing a woman, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And I think also when discussing this, a lot of people they miss like the power dynamic there, because they just go, well, I mean, you would object to a white character playing a black character, but not a black character playing a white character. That there's
Mm.
truth to that, but there's a reason for that. The reason the objection comes to the white character or white actor playing the black character is not just because the white actor plays a black character, it's because of the history that goes into that. And the fact that it's often more difficult for black actors to get like leading roles than it is for white actors. From minority actors, it's often frequently difficult. So a white actor who plays a minority character is basically narrowing the field of roles even further for minority actors, which is why there's a lot of controversy around that subject. And I mean, ideally, I just don't want. Ideally, I would want there to be no distinction at all. Like any character could really play any role, as long as that casting director and the director felt that the actor was the right person for that part, and the wanted and could convey whatever it is they want them to convey. So, like in what's the Bob Dylan movie with Kate Blanchett?
Jesus.
But yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
there's a
she
Bob
in
there's a
Period of
Bob
Life, she plays him. Yeah.
yeah, there's a Bob Dylan movie where there's basically multiple versions of Bob Dylan, and
Mm.
one of these versions is played by Kate Blanchett, and I don't have to
Yeah.
tell you, Bob Dylan is not a woman, and yet it works because that's Kate Blanchett manages to convey what the movie wants her to convey,
Mm.
and I think there's a lot of like uproar for nothing. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Uh, it's a really, really simple topic, and yet it's so very, very complex.
Yeah.
It seems. I mean, there's a number of different factors in play here. I mean, first of all, we go down the traditional route. So you've got people who simply do not want a character that already exists in whatever fiction
Yeah, a
to in
change
any
or
way differ, yeah,
yeah,
from the source material. Now, that's a sticking point with me because I've been watching, say, James Bond now since I was a child.
yeah,
A child. Every single incarnation of James Bond is an affluent white guy who fulfills the same kind of character almost every single time. So, in my opinion, what the hell is the problem with giving any other kind of actor of any ethnicity, man or woman, the opportunity to change that role?
Ab-
Uh,
I absolutely agree with you, especially because with James Bond in particular, he hasn't, even though the character's sort of been stuck in the time warp, like times have moved. So James Bond
yeah.
always takes place in like the current time in which the movie comes out. It isn't stuck in the 60s or 50s or whatever.
Yeah,
Where
or stuck in
where
this Cold
yeah,
War era,
yeah, where the books take place, right? It
exactly.
moves on to the modern era, and yet the character has
Yeah.
kind of been stuck in this time warp of the past. And so I don't see when the plot and setting moves forward, I don't see any reason why you couldn't move the character forward as well.
No, not at all. And you look at things like the new Doctor Who, the first female Doctor. Now,
Yeah,
again, these characters. I think people get so caught up on the origin of these characters that they don't stop to think that not only are we now in 2019, the world has moved on, it's time for a change, but you end up stagnating if you do the same thing so repeatedly over so many number of years. So that's one thing I dislike and something that a lot of people hang on to. And I just think, why not change these paradigms that have been, in place for so long? Break them up, alter them, give us
yeah,
something new to watch, something entertaining that can also reach out to not just a broader audience, but an audience that maybe have never seen their ethnicity represented in this type of character before.
yeah,
That's really important as well to me.
yeah,
The other side of it is, of course, the actual whitewashing debate that we are right in the middle of right now, for a number of different reasons and a number of different castings. The most obvious one that springs to mind is actually Tilda Swinton in Doctor Strange. Now, she was cast to play the Ancient One, and in the comics, the Ancient... I'm not wonderfully au fait with the Doctor Strange comics, but the Ancient One is supposed to be like a Tibetan monk, a male Tibetan monk. And so she was cast. There was massive controversy about, and I like her as an actress. She's incredibly talented.
yeah. She is.
But she was cast as this character, and Marvel got an incredible amount of flack for it. And after a while, they released a statement, and what the statement basically said, which is very interesting and also a bit difficult to understand in terms of just the pure artistic view of the director or whatever else. Basically, they said they had cast a Tibetan, say a Tibetan actor in that particular role to match what it was in the comics. It wouldn't have done as well in the Chinese market for obvious reasons. So it's not just the cultural whitewashing, it's
No.
also this weird business
Well,
sense of where you place certain types of people
I
in
mean
certain
that
markets.
the biggest example of that to me is what was it? Ridley Scott's Gods of Egypt, right?
And
Which
Exodus as
which
well.
had or Exodus. I forget which one it was, but there was a big uproar.
Exodus it was with Christian
Yeah,
Bale, yes, yeah.
there was a big uproar about yeah, Western actors playing these roles that
Yeah.
should really be sort of taken by Middle Eastern actors. And Ridley Scott basically saying, I don't want Mohammed something 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 in this role because he's not going to sell tickets. I want the big name actor in this role,
Yeah, yeah.
which garnered some controversy. I mean, there's a point to that, I think, but also, I mean, at that point, you just make the barrier of entry that much more difficult.
Well, I mean, we can go back years and years and years to especially when Hollywood was
I mean, Ben
in its
Kingsley
inf
playing Gandhi, right?
well, yes, exactly, and then even further back than that, with Southern Texans playing Japanese characters, for instance.
Yeah. And Patrick Stewart, Laurence Olivier, etc.,
Yeah,
playing Othello.
Scorsese's Last Temptation of Christ, Willem Dafoe as Christ, again. Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, Jim Cassavell as Christ. These Europeans who obviously don't reflect what Christ, the real version of, would have actually been, or even in that context. So it's been going on for a very long time. I think it really originated with the star system in Hollywood, and it still acts like that today. You know, the star system being the culmination of an actor's body of work, and how hyped people get behind a particular actor in a particular role, and the audience draw, you know, things like that. Even Tom Cruise, I remember, when Last Samurai came out. You know, a lot of people like, why is this American now starring in this? And actually, thinking more recently, Matt Damon in The Great Wall was also embroiled in a similar controversy. Um, it's quite interesting because Ed Screese, who is an actor from Game of Thrones, and also he's the bad guy in Deadpool, he actually pulled out of a Hellboy role because the original character in the comics was Asian, and he felt like, okay, it's time for me to move out and for an actor who would actually fit that ethnicity to be cast in the role.
Right.
So it's a weird dichotomy in Hollywood at the moment. Some people are backing away from it and they want to see, you know, new ethnicities in there, but then other actors are filling those roles anyway. So it's really difficult.
Yeah, it's just really weird to see like diversity has somehow become like a dirty word. And I mean, I get the frequent frustration when diversity just doesn't serve a purpose beyond diversity, when you don't do anything like with it. I feel
Well,
like
that's the flip side, isn't it? Casting diversity for the sake of it because you're
yeah,
trying to tick boxes. That's out of order as well.
yeah. I mean, out of order and out of yeah. I find it frustrating and annoying, but I don't like get offended by it. I I
No,
just I just don't get that reaction. Like, why is that somehow? I just don't get it. Like, like even though I don't particularly like it, like when it's just done for the sake of doing it, I appreciate the thought behind doing it. Even if I mean the thought is just to mass market appeal, but I just appreciate broader representation in general, even
yeah.
if it doesn't necessarily serve a plot purpose. I just prefer it to serve a plot purpose
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes beyond also
or
the
character purpose, I should
yeah,
say.
it goes beyond also the race and gender and the whitewashing. You know, even you know the actual casting of individuals in roles that you would not necessarily think that they shouldn't fulfill, or you know, for instance, when Ben Affleck was cast as Batman, my God, the uproar was like the internet broke for a week.
Yeah,
And recently we've got Patterson now cast as Batman. You know, it tends to happen with certain characters and certain roles. I mean, look at Heath Ledger when he was cast as Joker. Again, you think the world was burning around you because so many people were incredibly hateful towards it, and he turned out to be, in my opinion, one of the best Jokers we've seen, one of the most unique.
yeah,
But we see this a lot. But then you've got the flip side again, where you've got, for instance, Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell. Now, I am a huge fan of that manga, a
yeah.
huge fan of that manga, and so I have a history with it. And obviously, it was a seminal piece, and it's highly regarded. Same with Akira, for instance. Now, it doesn't maybe bother me as much as perhaps some people, but I still like in interviews afterwards, she was defending it and going against the you know being PC and all these things. But I just think if you're going to create a massive project based on a property like Ghost in the Shell, then maybe be more authentic to it. I don't
Right.
care. I don't care necessarily if a Chinese actor is playing an American role, if a British actor is playing an Australian role, you know. But sometimes you have to at least marry the project with the culture it's come from, and that's
Yeah.
really important, I think, to not only engage the broader audience that you want, but also to give a true account of what that original piece actually is, where it's from, why it was born of that culture. Yeah, rather than betraying the culture in some way. I really think that's important.
I think you're right. I mean, it's a tricky balance.
It is.
Yeah, like again. I mean, for Ghost in the Shell, I think really it was just marketing. Like
Yes,
the
totally agree.
big
Yeah,
name Scarlett Johansson,
yeah,
more likely to sell tickets than say a Japanese actress.
yeah.
Though I mean, I agree with you. I would have preferred to see a Japanese actress in that role because that's just yeah. I've seen the manga as well. I saw it back in the day. And it just has that feel to it of anime feel to it, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Although
Japan bleeds through that
although
film.
although with like the manga, it's frequently difficult. I find to like tell ethnicities apart in Japanese manga. Like
Yes.
to say
Yeah.
that person is Japanese and that person is Caucasian. They all kind of have a universal look
Yes.
to them. So I mean, I can kind of see it, but yeah, I totally get where you're coming from.
It's just there's so many questions within the subject matter. It's not a simple matter of talking about the representation of race or the representation of ethnicity or of gender. It's fan culture as well. You know, and as we just mentioned, we have these different pockets of fan culture that some of them like the idea of change. They like the idea of pushing characters beyond what they were and placing them or displacing them, as it were, from where they were into a different context. And some just don't want that. Some, and we saw that with the recent Star Wars film. I mean, wow. You know, of course, Rose is another character in that film that seemed to cause a lot of controversy because of the way she performed in the film, because she was Asian. And what it does do is not only push the conversation forward about this
Yeah,
kind of
both Rose
stuff,
and Johnny Boyega. Yeah.
exactly, John Boyega as well, yeah. But what it also does is give rise to more abuse, as we've seen from a lot of actors dealing with this stuff online, because you can't
Yeah,
get away from it
unfortunately. Yeah.
when you pay these huge roles. I mean, let's talk about a really interesting one that's just popped in my mind. Johnny Depp, the Lone Ranger.
Yeah. Yeah, that I was not fond of him in that role,
No,
to put it mildly. Yeah.
I mean, it seems as well that there are certain ethnicities that are almost absent. So when I teach representation for games or for film, whatever, we often talk about the absent representations. So disability, for instance, is often absent. You know, things like that
Yeah.
were in popular media, and Native Americans are often another ethnicity which is kind of glossed over. You know,
Yeah.
and the big actors just take those roles. It's few and far between that you often get an actual Native American fulfilling those particular performances.
Yeah, and it's funny because now that I think about it, it's often characters who sort of or actors who sort of go across that realm. Like for instance, characters who are like mentally healthy who play mentally unhealthy people frequently bank awards at award ceremonies, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even though like they don't have mental issues, but they play people who do.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting dichotomy. Like there that's a transfer that we actually like applaud and say, oh, that's
Yeah.
really good acting. But we can't say, oh, that's really good acting if like we have a black James Bond or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a real problem because I mean, look at Daniel Day-Lewis, one of the most celebrated actors of our age, quite rightly so. His first Oscar he won, I think it was for My Left Foot, you know, playing a disabled character, or even, for instance, like Leonardo DiCaprio's character in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, you know, a mental disability.
Yeah.
They are lauded. Actors are lauded over characters they play that have some physical or mental issue they have to deal with or process or perform as. But yeah, you don't then get the flip side of an ethnicity just playing a character really, really well that might be considered another ethnicity. It's a
Yeah.
really weird dichotomy Hollywood's in right now because you can see the great push to try and make things more diverse. But then, as we've said, you don't also want to force that, so it's ticking boxes. You know, actors should be in the roles that they suit. Not always. Actors
Yeah, but
often aren't in the roles they suit, but
I mean, ticking boxes is just the nature of like big picture movie production in general.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you want to hit that demographic, you want to hit that demographic, you want to hit that demographic, and then that demographic. Like you want to hit as many as possible across the board, and that's why you make these like checklists that we need this to appeal to these, we need this to appeal to these, we need this to appeal to these. It's also, I find it funny when there's also like this like for the whole Brie Larson thing from Captain Marvel, where a lot of people like took her comments out of context, where she basically said, "Oh, she doesn't want anything to do with white men. She hates white men," because she said, I forget her movie, but she made a movie that was basically aimed at teen girls and said, "I don't care what some 40-year-old guy thinks about it. I didn't make it for
Yeah.
him. I made it for them." And a lot of people were offended by that and said, "Oh, she doesn't care about white men. She hates white men because of those comments." And I was sitting there, no, she didn't. She made the movie for teen girls. If I make an animated movie for kids, if I make a SpongeBob SquarePants movie, and I have a 67-year-old telling me, "I think your movie sucked," I probably wouldn't listen all that
Yeah,
much to him, as much to him as I would like the 10-year-old who tells me, "I love that movie."
yeah.
Right?
Not
I
exactly
mean,
the target
it's
demographic there, is it?
yeah, yeah. I mean, all movies have like target demographics that they aim for, and just saying,
Yeah.
and just saying that, I don't see like the offensive nature of that. And that's not. I mean, I don't particularly like Brie Larson, so I don't particularly feel like I have to defend her. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people like took her comments there out of context.
Yeah, and that's the nature of the internet now. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is. And then the outrage machine gets into gear, and
yeah,
the
and it
the the,
becomes
fru-
this little walled garden that can't be broken
the
into
frustrating
anymore.
thing there is like the outrage about the outrage, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just this perpetual cycle, like of yeah.
I
I
read
don't get
something
it.
interesting before we started the podcast. I just watched Us, which is Jordan Peele's second horror film after Get Out.
Yeah.
And in an interview, he said that he won't be casting any white male leads in his films. And he said it's not because I don't like white males. It's simply because
You want to give the opportunities to people who won't ordinarily get
exactly.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many other films that provide that
Yeah,
opportunity,
precisely.
like
Yeah.
like almost all of them.
Yes.
That if he's got the opportunity within his productions to allow for a more diverse cast and to cast African Americans, black, white women, who whatever he wants to give them more of an opportunity, then I've got no problem with that because the rest
No,
of
I
the
would applaud
industry
that.
is
Yeah.
doing different things. So there's room for all of these things.
Yeah.
There is. I just wish that Hollywood maybe now and again take a bit more care over certain representations of culture, not necessarily particular characters, like I've said. I don't care if Doctor
But that's
Strange
but that's
is a
because
man or a woman or a.
Hollywood doesn't do substance, you know. It just
Yeah,
is
well, yeah,
it
yeah,
just does surface. So Hollywood
exactly.
doesn't Hollywood doesn't care about like the history that goes into a particular ethnicity and the culture that goes into it. It just cares
Yeah.
about the skin color, right? Or yeah, basically.
Well, another interesting one, and this is again something I didn't know until just before the podcast, is Memoirs of a Geisha.
Yeah.
It's obviously a Japanese film. It's set in Japan, all these things, but the majority of the cast was Chinese. And part of that was because a lot of the actresses that were asked, Japanese actresses, just didn't want. It's not a particularly well thought of
Profession
story in Japan.
or
Yeah, well, yeah, and profession. So therefore, a lot of actresses didn't want to engage with that role. So again, it's. I think a lot of people will think this stuff is cut and dry. It's one thing or another thing, and it's not. There's so many things from the cultural representation to whether the actress or actresses actually want to do it to the business
yeah.
proposition about certain casting and how that will affect certain not just domestic markets but markets in different territories across the world now. So it's really really complex this subject. It's
It
you scratch
is.
the surface and all the little pasta falls out because there's so many strands that we
Because I
have to
mean,
pick up on and
it's
discuss.
also because I mean, as you just sort of lightly touched on, it's easy to sort of get outraged about a casting call on the surface when there might have been
Yeah.
other factors that actually drove that casting call or casting decision beyond the ones you fought. Like maybe they did actually try and cast like an ethnic minority in the role, but they just couldn't find any, and so they had to go to somewhere else, or they had a deal that fell through, or any other number of factors that could be at play.
Yeah, it's not always the obvious, oh,
No.
they weren't an Asian actor that we could get, so we didn't put them in there. It can be such a multitude of things.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, let's talk about then one of maybe the most controversial instances of casting and the way that character was brought to the screen. And that was Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, with Robert
Robert
Downey
Downey
Jr.
Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah, who was basically blacked up, as it were, and won an. Was it? Did he win the Oscar for that best at point, or did
I
he
I
get an Oscar
don't
nod?
I don't remember. I think
He at
I
least got a
honestly don't
nod for
remember.
it, I
Yeah.
think. So again, it's like, I mean that's really controversial when it's not even about that particular cultural context when that was actually happening. You're not making a comment on it, kind of, but you kind of are in a completely different way.
I mean, I thought they were. I thought it actually worked with Downey Jr. I didn't, for my part, I didn't really have an issue with it. I thought it was
No,
funny.
no, no, not at all.
And yeah, because the character is so like self-serious and takes
Yeah.
himself so seriously, and that he doesn't realize like the borders that he's basically stepping over. And that kind of cluelessness can be really really funny.
Well, the
If
ultimate
it's played
character
right.
actor in that. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I suppose the flip side would be like Marlon and Damon Wayans in White Chicks, which I've never seen,
Yeah.
the comedy, but
Yeah, I
that's
haven't
done
seen
for
it
a
either. Yeah.
it's done for a much
And I mean,
less interesting reason.
yeah, and Eddie Murphy, like in, I don't know, although that wasn't really he didn't really cross the ethnic threshold, but there's the sheer amount of characters he would
Loads,
switch
yeah,
between
loads and loads of characters in a lot of his films
that would
actually,
really
but
sort of break stuff,
Nutty Professor in
break
particular,
the
yeah.
experience of it.
Eddie Murphy turned into Eddie Murphy, who turns to Eddie Murphy and
Yeah.
laughs at Eddie Murphy, and he's like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
whole lot of cool Eddie Murphy going on." So yeah, it is a really difficult subject. There are a lot more factors in play than I think people often realize. It's not just a simple matter of effectively representing race. It's not always just, oh, we need this character to remain the same for the rest of its existence. There's so many more things going on culturally in terms of the way Hollywood works, and the way Hollywood is slowly evolving as well. We're starting to see that a little bit more and more.
I mean, what are the worst like representations I've seen of an ethnic minority was in I always forget the name of the movie, but it's like an old it's a kind of science fiction film from like late 60s, early 70s. And it's about basically the Chinese dig a tunnel through under the Pacific Ocean to America in order to invade America. And the Chinese are basically played. They're made up to look like Mr. Spock without Spock ears.
Right.
Like it's
No,
it's
no,
so hilariously
no.
wrong.
At least we've come some way from there. But that era in particular, yeah, I mean, Asians were often, if not almost always, played by Americans in
Yeah, with slanted eyes, like
slanted
heavily.
eyes and
Like Mickey Rooney, infamously, right?
Yeah, yeah, entirely. I'm really, really badly. Like the makeup
Yeah.
is so hysterically over the toply stereotypical that and now it's really, it's not difficult to watch in a sense of, oh my God, I'm horrified. But at the time, you were just like, this is. But again, then, especially then, it would have been very, very difficult to get that amount of, depending on the cast, obviously, that amount of Chinese actors to play the particular roles because the world was very, very different. Nowhere near as connected as it is now. So we are moving in the right direction. We are seeing some better casting. We're starting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We have better representation than ever, I think.
Yeah,
Which is
definitely.
which is a good thing.
It is a good thing. And like I said, I don't want to be sat here, in 10, if we do this for another 10 years, we bloody will. But, I don't want to be sat here in 10 years thinking, another white Bond doing the same thing. In
Yeah,
the
precisely.
Same...
When you have franchises that, I mean, the Disney live action stuff. I don't get the point because you make like Lion King, which is kind of a like 1-to-1 remake of, from what I gather, I haven't seen it, of the
It's
animation.
supposed to be almost a shot-for-shot remake, yeah.
Of the like original animated film.
Yeah.
Why? there's no change. If you want to like do a remake, do something with it beyond just like making it look lifelike, I guess. Yeah, do something with it, like casting Ariel as a completely different type of actress.
Yeah.
And I don't. I'm sorry, I have to break this to you guys, but she's a mermaid. She's not a human being.
I know, man.
She doesn't have a particular skin color.
Mind
It's
blown.
not- yeah.
I don't know what the hell Disney is doing.
She could be blue. I mean,
Yeah, it makes no difference. I mean, when you're starting to purvey that a fictional, completely fictional creature, not a human being, a creature has to be assigned a particular race or or even gender.
yeah.
You're losing your mind a little bit, in my opinion. I mean, for all the controversy over Will Smith playing the genie in Aladdin, I don't care. It's a blue genie. Yeah, Robin Williams played that role
Yeah, I mean
legendarily.
that's basically where my
Yeah.
comes in. Like, who's gonna
No, look,
Will Smith
Robin
gonna
Williams is never
outdo
going
Robin
to be
Williams? Yeah,
surpassed. Yeah, he's never
yeah,
going to be surpassed. But quite frankly, if you were to say to me, okay, which kind of Hollywood actors right now are kind of fun and bigger than life and you think might be able to perform in that role? He'd be in the conversation. Of course he would.
I'd probably
So,
nominate Jim Carrey actually.
Jim Carrey, yeah.
Because that's he has that same sort of mad energy
The
that
manicness.
yeah that Robin did. I
Yeah.
think.
But I just don't care. This is a fictional character, a fictional thing. Who cares what kind of ethnicity plays a fictional anything?
Yeah,
You know, now, if an author who is alive and well today has written a particular character in a very specific way for a purpose, and they have something to say about the casting, then I think that's also valid too.
yeah, yeah. I mean that
It has to be.
just like any input they have on the adaptation, just
Yes.
like any plot changes you make, like they have input on that as well.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I mean I think that that's obvious, but that yeah, I don't I just don't see it with casting in particular, but I don't think you do either.
No,
But
no,
yeah,
no, no.
that's just part of like the adaptation process, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can talk about all kinds of films where the casting isn't what people think it should be. But play a Braveheart for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
He's not Scottish. It's Mel Gibson playing
Yeah.
playing William Wallace. I mean, come
And
on,
Mel Gibson quite a bit older than William Wallace at the
quite a
time.
bit older than William Wallace. Exactly. So Hollywood is Hollywood, and yes, we're now in a better state than we were. We are seeing more diversity in different roles. We are seeing more traditional roles change and become more unique, which I really want to see. And we're starting to see a slight rebalance. We're nowhere near yet. The seesaw is still there for representation at a right angle, but we are seeing it tip just that little bit. And as long as we see more diverse roles and we see roles written for different ethnicities and not just for the same kind of characters we've
And
seen copied and pasted.
not just ethnicities, but people with disabilities.
Oh
For
yeah,
instance,
yeah, absolutely.
in Breaking Bad, where Walt's son actually has cerebral palsy, right?
Yeah.
Which I mean that's just not that's not just a kid playing it. That's a kid who has cerebral palsy, and it comes through
Yeah.
in his performance as genuine.
Well, I think that's important as well. Giving the opportunity to groups who have various physical disabilities to also be allowed to perform and to be on camera and to give a truer representation of what that character would be like.
Yeah,
You know,
precisely because I mean when you have like physically and mentally sound actors take those roles, you like as I said earlier, you narrow the field for minority actors who could be up for those roles as well and who don't really get offered that type of role outside of that specific niche. Like
yeah, yeah,
you get an able actor playing a disabled person, but you don't get a disabled person playing an able person, even if that able person just sits behind a desk or something, right?
yeah. You'd never get that. And it's going to be interesting, particularly over the next 5 years, to see how roles like that become more prominent in movies. We're seeing it more in the indie scene, and we're seeing it a bit more in the big Hollywood productions. But I think over the course of, I mean, Hollywood's always been a very liberal place.
Yeah,
For the most part, obviously, there's pockets in every institution, organization,
I
industry,
mean
which aren't.
that I think it much like academia, it comes across that I mean it's sort of by nature of its environment
Yeah.
because Hollywood and the entertainment industry sort of has to run on empathy to an
Yes.
extent. And empathy is sort of leans towards the left and leans towards the liberal that we need to take care of people and we need to care about people and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with academia, where like higher intelligence generally sort of also means a higher likelihood of empathy or a higher degree of empathy.
Empathy, understanding, and also
Yeah,
wanting to have knowledge of other cultures as well.
yeah,
To broaden the horizons of your own intellect. So I think all these things are really important, and I just hope that we now continue along this path where things aren't forced, but more and more diversity comes to the major films in Hollywood, to really drive that representation forward. And we see a balance between the types of roles that are offered to different types of people. Hollywood was always a melting pot, and now we truly have an opportunity for it to continue to bubble away and to be that and to become more progressive. You just don't want to see,
It's
like I
fun.
said,
It's funny though, because you look at the graphs. I think people post these graphs. I think of like the degree of parts that get offered to white actors and
mm,
or lead roles that are white, lead roles that are black, lead roles that are, and they haven't really moved very much the last couple of years in general. So there hasn't really been that like wider diversity. I don't think that in general over the entire
well,
movie
no,
landscape.
because what happens is the most prominent black actors, Asian actors, etc., are the ones who generally get those roles.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
difficult for new talent um, from various cultures to emerge because Hollywood still is very narrow. It still relies on the old star system. It still relies on its
yeah.
big white
Bankable
hitters
stars,
to the
bankable names.
bankable
Yeah.
stars, exactly, to fulfill those roles. So it's often supporting roles in those type of movies that end up being there for a more ethnically diverse cast.
And it's funny because I think streaming is actually one of the things that can sort of countermand that bankable thing. Because
Yes, yeah.
you don't generally like when you go through Netflix, you don't generally like look at, oh, it's there isn't really like a casting list with Samuel L. Jackson with like big letters. Like you might see him in the trailer or something that comes out. But that's about it. You don't really see the headline grabbing names there. You just see the movie and the presentation of the movie.
Yeah, yeah. It ends up being a lot more fractious and a lot easier to find stuff that you maybe ordinarily wouldn't because it isn't
Yeah,
sold in the same way. It's more like going to a video store like it used to be.
yeah,
You look at the box art and you read the comments or whatever it is, or on Netflix you'll see the trailer playing, than it is about Tom Cruise is in that movie, you know? And
yeah,
that's another way to just I mean, look if you look across Netflix now. I mean, the amount of wide films orientated from so many different places
yeah,
that discuss so many different things is really, really impressive. And Netflix
yeah,
understands that because it's now available in so many territories across the world, even if their markets are aligned a bit for each territory, there is still going to be stuff which is homogenous across all of those things.
yeah. And it's I mean I think one of the things that sort of I think Netflix negotiates with like local governments and stuff to sort of produce a particular amount of local content, a localized
Yeah,
content
yeah,
for each region and each country.
exactly. And like for instance, in the UK, we have a really big Indian Pakistani community.
Yeah,
And you can see a lot of Bollywood films and a lot of Indian-inspired cinema on there, which is great. Some of it my stuff, some of it not so much, but that doesn't matter because at least then you're providing this great diversity of culture,
yeah,
and that's what I want from a lot of films. I want to understand things that maybe I haven't before, be exposed to things I haven't before,
precisely.
and a
Broaden
place
your
like Netflix is
horizons.
great for that. Yeah,
Yeah,
and Netflix is a great place for that, I think.
yeah. No, I agree. So yeah, I don't know. Should we round up? I think we've pretty much touched
I think we covered a lot of
on the stuff
different,
that we could.
yeah, under that umbrella, certainly, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like casting outrage, I don't get it. Like really, just I kind of want to say grow up.
Yeah, no, yeah,
um,
I'm entirely agreeing with you on that. I just,
and I'm sorry, but I just like I don't get the outrage over a black person playing James Bond.
yeah,
I just
no, not at all,
like
not at all, or a woman, again, as you said, Ariel is a mermaid, a fish human, okay, a fish human. I don't care who plays a fish human. And,
what I especially like about some of that some of the comments on I think on Twitter on the Little Mermaid thing was how many a couple of people who said like, oh, Hans Christian Andersen was Danish and so forth, and he was talking from a white place and particular white place and so forth, and no, as a Danish person, not really.
It's a mermaid.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I think, yeah, sometimes you've just got to go, what's the matter with you? Honestly, just
Yeah.
get over it. I can't wait to see the new Little Mermaid because it'll be interesting. It'll be different. And
Yeah,
that's what
again, at least they're doing something new or different with it.
well, the last few remakes have just been the literal interpretation of
Yeah,
the film that was
precisely.
already better.
Which is
So, yeah.
which is why I haven't seen any of them because what's the freaking point? I would rather
Yeah,
see the
yeah.
animated movie.
Well, it's like watching Gus
like,
Van Sant's remake of The Psycho, isn't it? Like
one of the
literally
things
the same
one of
film.
the things that keeps me away from like watching the live I don't like the CG Lion King, I should say. Basically, it's basically made the same way they did Dinosaur back in the day, Disney, where they filmed at real locations and then just put in the CG. Is like real animals are not particularly emotive.
No.
So you're basically
So you have to give them weird faces. And if they're not animated, like as in properly 2D cell animated, where you can have ridiculous faces, how would you make them express properly?
Yeah, precisely. It's all in the voice then.
Yeah.
And it just like it loses a lot of its appeal. It loses a lot of its just its character in that transition. That doesn't
I think
really
that's
work.
the key part. It loses its character. Those old school Disney films, especially Aladdin and prior, Lion King and prior, that era, those films had really great character, great physicality to the animation and the voices that were there. And I just think, Disney wants that moolah, and they've hit this little treasure trove of remaking everything they've ever made animated, and they're not going to stop.
When the other day I saw like I there was a streaming service up in the place I was, and I saw that they had made a live action version of Kim Possible, and I was finally like, no, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm out. I am out.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what then, to end it, I think maybe another conversation we should have in the next couple of weeks is remakes. Just a podcast on remakes. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, we could do that.
That's a subject matter that really interests me, given a lot of the stuff that's happening right now, including bloody Disney and its remakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was great. I think we will do this more often. I love having the chats about things which are maybe a bit more separate, because often we're always focused on a particular film and the stuff around it. But yeah, it's nice to talk about the wider stuff affecting the film industry. It's cool.
So please, if you have opinions on this, please feel free to share them in the comment section. And if you can explain to me why it's so offensive in a way so I can understand it, I would really appreciate it.
The Ariel thing, yeah, completely. Yeah. Right, so a little thing before we go as well. So we've heard a lot of people in our comments and a lot of people we've talked to who've really wanted to listen to our podcasts and not just see them on YouTube. Well, now you can. Every podcast we have released is now uploaded on Anchor. I'll be rolling them out a couple every week until we catch up with ourselves, if you see what I mean. So we're releasing the same one at the same time as our YouTube video. There's one up right now. The first one we did, His Girl Friday. So you go to Anchor, go to Spotify, look for the Last Edit podcast, and you'll be able to listen to our podcast. It's across all other podcast stuff platforms as well. So go and have a listen to Your Heart's Content, and every few days, 3-4 days, I'll release another one for you to have a little listen to wherever you may be.
So until next time, guys, thank you for watching or listening, as it were, and we'll catch you on the next episode, hopefully.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.